Counselors and therapists use the word triggered to refer to intense emotional distress a person suddenly feels when something reminds them of a past traumatic experience. In recent times, however, triggered in many people's usage has come to refer to being disgusted, incensed, or outraged by something, often a social or political issue they have been following. People triggered in this way frequently display a sense of moral indignation or even self-righteousness when denouncing whoever or whatever it is that has offended them. Of course, right and wrong exists, and good and evil, and yes, wicked people whose indisputably wicked deeds naturally evoke strong reactions in anyone human. But let's be honest, most of the time, that which triggers people these days is usually of a far more debatable, subjective, and often actually quite trivial nature. It's knee-jerk reaction stuff. Yet hyper-reacting, freaking out, taking the click or rage bait, getting snared by manipulative media or fake news creators, call it whatever you will, is truly a modern global phenomenon. Why have people become so volatile? What's behind it? And most importantly, how can we not fall into this trap, but rather rise above it and then peacefully help others to do the same? First of all, what are some of the main causal factors? An almost worldwide decline in standards of education and efforts by online influencers at all levels of society to train people to swallow their reality has deeply impacted civilization. Many sociologists warn that humans now appear to be exercising less critical thinking, initiative, and self-awareness, instead becoming more reactive, gullible, yes, easily triggered. In many people, what lurks beneath that propensity to be routinely provoked is something that's not in itself a recent phenomenon, nor one that's internet-created, but an ancient human susceptibility. We're speaking of the age-old tendency of human beings to harbor resentments, to give themselves permission to hold on to dislike, bitterness, even hatred of someone or something. This long-running universal tendency is, in fact, many humans' well-known Achilles heel, and it's actually being heavily exploited in our time by every agenda-driven, opportunistic force seeking to influence us, be it on or offline. Whether the source is individual, corporate, or political, only our alertness and awareness can defeat it. Everyone has a right to disapproval, sure, and to complain about unacceptable things. But to prevent that going overboard and worse, being used against us, we need to dig a little deeper. When somebody gets triggered, there's often a simmering undercurrent of righteous anger bubbling just beneath the surface. That's actually not about the issue. It's about their ego. Have you ever noticed how certain folks are perpetually on the hunt for the next thing to get riled up about? Players for whom, "That's outrageous," or "How dare you," are favorite lines. Believe it or not, reveling in getting offended has become a thing. It's no exaggeration to say that many people these days are hooked on that rush of irritation, like a substance addiction, because reacting to every little annoyance actually reinforces their identity. Forget philosophical concepts like, "I think, therefore I am." We're talking here about people whose equally incorrect maxim should be, "Look, I'm triggered, therefore I am important." If this sounds fanciful, just closely observe anyone, be it another person or yourself, who has fallen into this trap. When all's peaceful or there's no controversy, they struggle to converse. Yes, we humans have a real issue with this, and always have had. Adopting a grievance may get you stuck in a rigid against mindset, but reliably it also intensely stimulates the ego. Just read some history, and you'll see countless examples of how collective grievances often linger for generations, driving ongoing cycles of conflict between nations or in communities. At its core, any grievance is heavy emotional baggage tied to past events, usually kept alive by replaying the story in one's mind or sharing it with others. And to the ego, this feels great. Why? Because when I'm angry, outraged, or offended by implication, I am more. I am in the right, and someone else, he, she, or they, are wrong, and so, by implication, less than me. There's often a fine line between responsibly responding to evils in the real world and manifesting a reflex, which looks like moral indignation, but is actually self-indulgence. Becoming preoccupied with grievances, getting frequently triggered, thus fanning one's ego, clouds the judgment about what's actually happening and affects interactions with others. We can't objectively unmask an evil, solve a problem, or foster communication when we ourselves are adding fuel to the fire because we're just loving our important adversarial role. Harboring strong grievances, maintaining a list of enemies to fulminate about, can keep you tangled in ego-driven thoughts which ripple negatively through many aspects of your life. It takes courageous self-honesty to recognize whether or not you're holding on to any old, personal grievances, perhaps concerning someone in your life you haven't fully forgiven. Some people are shocked when they suddenly realize that an old, buried hatred of a family member, former friend, or ex-partner is the real ego powerhouse driving their social issue or political rage. Yesterday's hurt, betrayal, disgust over dishonesty or lack of integrity has been transferred from someone they need to finally just let go of to whatever they can find offensive today. If you uncover a lingering grievance, acknowledge the thoughts that keep it alive and the emotions tied to those thoughts, but don't force yourself to let it go. Trying to make yourself forgive can backfire. Instead, forgiveness tends to unfold naturally when you realize that clinging to that grievance only reinforces the adversarial human ego. Us humans all have one. And when that ego runs the show, sure, we get our cheap daily hits of rage or righteousness, but they're toxic to our systems, and they don't solve any problems. Like so many spiritual and psychological matters, the key lies in realization. Jesus' advice to forgive your enemies really speaks to dismantling the ego structures that trap us in cycles. Remember, the past, including the buried past, doesn't have the power to dictate your present. Only your grievances about the past, your old emotional baggage, can do that. When you're free of ego-driven grievances, will you still sometimes get triggered? Not really, because what will happen will be a totally different and much healthier process. You will see or hear an arising problem, need, or challenge that your moral code tells you requires a response. Then you'll calmly and intelligently analyze and, if possible, take action. At which time, you won't be a self-deceiving individual venting ego-fanning grievance toxins at a substitute target, but an awake, aware being capable of becoming the change you want to see in the world.
Triggered people often fall into traps laid by others who are clever, but lack genuine wisdom, and more about the struggle between these rival influences awaits you back in our insightful episode 16.